Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Brian. I'm the Customer Success Manager at Tresl Segments. And we got John, Matt, and Jacob and some really exciting content for you guys today about segmentation and personalization. So I'm just gonna go through the agenda of today. John, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so we're gonna do some self-intros from John, Matt, and Jacob. We're gonna talk a little bit about what we've prepared for you today. It's a lot related to data, especially DFC, direct from consumer data. We're going to talk about how this data can really help you future-proof the growth of your store and how to leverage this data to create more personalized experiences for your customers and get them coming back. And then we're just going to share some examples and some recipes for success. So without further ado, I'm going to have John introduce himself.
Hey guys, my name is John Chow. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tresl. I've been a data scientist for about 16 years. I went through retail data science first, doing demand forecasting, price optimizations. Then I was at a digital agency doing a lot of social media, predictive models, and segmentation. And before I started Tresl, I was at LinkedIn. I was a senior manager for data science team there, building like machine learning models for sales marketing teams. I'm all about making data more human and analytics more compassionate. I felt like there's such a strong need in the world, to better understand data and leverage it for business growth. This is why, I quit LinkedIn, left sort of like, high tech firms and just really focused on making it more accessible, making the technology more accessible, making data more accessible to our merchants on Shopify. Kicking it over to Matt.
Awesome. My name is Matt Barr. I am the CEO and co-founder of Enquirelabs. We are a post-purchase survey solution for Shopify merchants. So what we like to do is we like to say we bring speed and scale to survey data, to zero-party data. So as of today, we work with a little over 2,000 brands on Shopify. It's everyone from Allbirds to Skims, as you see here. Just super excited to be here. We kind of got into the survey space a little serendipitously. Launched Enquire in May 2018, very much as a side project, and have now morphed into, we're a team of 7, distributed mainly in New York. Excited to be here.
Hi there, my name is Jacob Sappington. I am a partner at Homestead Studio. Homestead Studio is a growth and retention e-commerce agency. We help brands who primarily on Shopify who are looking to not only grow their business, but also keep bringing their customers back over and over again. I'm excited to help present today alongside Segments and Enquire.
Great. Okay, so I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, but today we've prepared to you exactly, what is DFC data, how is it gathered and activated, how to use this data as the foundation to kind of, grow your store and future-proof the growth of your store, how to leverage this data to, again, create more personalized, targeted experiences for your customers. In fact, a recent survey by Twilio Segments said, 60% of consumers actually, they said they'd become repeat buyers if they had a personalized shopping experience, right? So that's kind of what we're gonna cover today. So without further ado, let's just jump right in and talk about what DFC data is and how to, create personalized experiences.
Awesome. So just to kind of highlight, just level set with everyone, the different types of data. Everyone's definitely familiar with the first party, second party, and third party data. The new data type that has entered the market as of the last couple of years is zero party data. Again, it probably should have been called first party data if we're really thinking about it, but Forrester had kind of another thought on the process. But zero party data is essentially survey data. That's the easiest way to think about it. It's data that your customers actively provide to the brand, to your brand. So whether it could be everything from what is your birthday, how would you classify yourself, to your email address is something that you're inputting and is technically zero party data. First party data, we're really going to highlight on those two during this webinar. The easiest way to think about the two of them is first party data is like the data that you see in Google Analytics. It's click data, page views, purchase history, et cetera. And that zero party data is more of that form driven data types. So third party data, just to kind of mention it, is definitely very popular with kind of large scale CPG. It's very often purchased, and it very often enriches other data sets. So third-party data is definitely the data source that's getting more difficult to capture and put into practice. And the reason being is what I'm going to chat with on the next slide. So why everyone is talking about direct from consumer. So in DFC, just to kind of to highlight that, it's just data directly from your customers. It could be first party, it could be zero party. It's really anything that they're providing to you, making a purchase, telling you their preferences, et cetera. So everyone's talking about this. Again, I don't know if I need to go too deep into this, just because I feel like the drum has been beaten since last April around Apple's iOS 14.5. But that definitely was the catalyst for all of these discussions, and a ton of brands just kind of going back to the drawing board and trying to look for different mechanisms and different strategies to help them scale. So previous, call it 3 years ago, knowing who your customer wasn't maybe the number one priority. A lower CAC, a better bid strategy, better targeting, or better creative on Facebook was typically the number one thing brands cared about. And what Apple kind of shook everyone up was like, hey, like this isn't how things are going to work in the future. You really have to get to know your customers if you want to understand them and know kind of whether it's how to allocate your media budget, what channels to go in, how to talk to them, et cetera. So that's kind of, that is why everyone's talking about this. It's definitely not going away. I feel like we're just in day one of kind of this privacy revolution. So the next slide is just an example. So this is just a screenshot of Enquirelabs, our dashboard here. The question you see there is attribution related. How did you hear about us? I'm sure everyone on the call has seen a Heidi Who or answered one when purchasing somewhere. But the other example is just to kind of highlight on the 4 categories we really talk about. Attribution is kind of our bread and butter. It's how we were founded. And the other types are kind of questions that can be, or problems that can be solved with this type of data is personalization, which Jacob's definitely going to talk more about. CRO, so conversion rate optimization. This is kind of like the easiest one to implement. It's example questions are like, how was your shopping experience? And you'll hear a ton of customers tell you what they didn't like about shopping on your site. And then the 4th one is more or less the legacy type. It's just what we call just generalized customer research. It's demographic data, age, gender, anything that helps you kind of build personas in the aggregate for your customers would fall under that general customer research vertical.
Cool. Yeah. So we just heard from Matt. Like, I mean, there's so much data you can collect from the post-purchase survey, right? Like, attribution. Where are they from? Demographics, birthdays, interests, that anything that can share with you. Whether they're a subscriber or not. Maybe you're running a subscription and you're trying to figure out whether this person is a new customer and haven't subscribed, or are they an active subscriber. Loyalty. What has their relationship been like with you? Are they gold tier, silver tier? What have they done? You definitely, there's a lot of things you can customize based on their experience, using by having this direct from consumer data to enrich different customer profiles, right? And that data actually comes through via a lot of times via tags, right? So this is really quickly, this is like a screenplay from segments from our product. And what you see here is that we were able to actually create a lot of segments on top of the different customer purchase patterns, as well as the tags that are coming in, right? So in this case, you can say, okay, well, I want to maybe segment on a customer coming in from, let's say, from TikTok and who has bought certain products on their first basket, maybe haven't purchased for, let's say, 30 days, 60 days with an average order value like over like $50, right? You can get really detailed on the segments that you want to create through our attributes and events filtering experience. Save that segment. And what's really cool is that we built this platform in a way that it just works like a pivot table, right? It's like, you pick your date ranges, you pick your segment, and then the data will just change, right? Based on the set of customers list that you give it. And so in this case, this is a screenshot from a part of analytics that we call product relations. And product relations are all about cross-sell and replenishment, right? And so you can actually segment, let's say, based off of like that attribution channel that you collect, segment on base of number of orders that they have, any type of interest that they give you, and you can actually see what products those customers are buying together in their baskets, and whether they're coming back and replenishing on that same product. So this is like really powerful stuff that basically just unlocks with the more customer tag and more DFC data you collect.
So next, we're going to talk about where we can collect this DFC data. So Matt's kind of alluded to it, but zero-party data, we're really looking at like form-driven responses, post-purchase surveys, quizzes. Like where they hear about you, why they choose you over a competitor. Are you shopping for you or for a friend? Which product are you most interested in? If it's like a pre-purchase question, where do you usually get product X? When is your birthday? All these are just zero-party data questions that we can use to get to know our customers better and really inform how we speak with them. And then we have like our first-party data examples: purchasing history, on-site actions, email actions. Really, our best segments that we make combine all of these, but really, we want to be collecting zero and first-party data to really round out our DFC data collection. Here I have a couple examples of how we're segmenting based off this data. That first graphic is from Winley. It's an allergy relief company. So basically, we're taking purchase history and preferences into consideration when segmenting out who doesn't get this email. We're taking out people who have purchased before, and we're taking out people who have taken their test. 2 people who don't get any benefit out of this email. The second one, this is where we're turning towards collecting zero-party data. This brand has 4 distinct buyer personas. There's a little bit of overlap between them, but we are asking what category they fall underneath. So that way we can figure out what percentage of our audience is a part of this avatar, and then we can create content and then really speak to them in the way. Because if you look at this, a lifelong allergy sufferer and a wellness investor are just 2 completely different people. And so we want to make sure that when we talk to them, that what we're saying makes sense for that person. So those are just 2 examples of how we pull in some of that data.
Yeah, I'm definitely an allergy sufferer.
Yep, I'm this company's ideal customer, so I'll have to give it a shot and make sure that my exclusions are working right.
And I would love to volunteer that information, I think, if I was offered that survey. Yeah, because then it's just it may be the better prescribed products for my situation, right?
Yep. And then as you saw in that last in that screenshot there, like it tells them like this is why we want this data. It's going to help us make sure that like we're speaking to your goals. And so not only are we collecting it, but then we're telling them why and how that data is going to be used.
Yeah, this is actually just fits right into our the next topic, which is like so much of the attention, is now focusing on remarketing and retention marketing away from sort of acquisition. Gone are the days like Matt was telling us earlier, with iOS, with like Facebook, a lot of the sort of cheap ad buying days are sort of like past us, right? Like in rear view mirrors, and many modern brands are now pursuing a more balanced approach. They're putting some of the added dollars and putting it back into retention marketing, right? And so here are a couple of examples from brands that we've worked with in the past year and a half. True Botanicals is a beauty brand. They have a lot of like essence and oils, and they double down on their subscription business, right? And so we were able to help them generate about a 128% increase in the number of subscribers that they have. Oil Life, this is another beauty customer. They created segmentation campaigns, using segments, by the different products, skin types, questions that they asked from the customers, and now they saw a huge bump in terms of click-through rates and open rates. And I think some of those things, we'll get to see a little bit later, some examples. Shorty Love, this one is just like lifecycle segmentation. It's just understanding like when people are more likely to purchase. Really got them to like, they were doing like blasts before. They didn't really understand segmentation, but through using our platform, using some of that data, they can actually now, really focus on generating that retention dollars from just email, right? Like it's just daily emails, but you send them at the right time with the targeted segmentation, it works. And why do I know? It's because we actually have data to back this up, right? So we actually pulled together, this is data from 2021. So it's like not like, age-old data. We pulled together a couple of like 8-figure brands with average order value roughly about $100. What we saw is that like if you get people to purchase, so like 20%, repurchase rate, that's pretty common, right? Like, like it's like out of everybody, probably 20% have bought more than twice. But what you're seeing is like, if you get them to move from 1 to 2, so they're much more likely to go from 2 to 3, right? And so that's actually a 2x bump from repurchase likelihood, going from 1-timer to 2-timer, right? Like they're now 40% likely to make that next purchase. And then that further increases to about 54% when they're at 3 purchases. And then you do see a bit of a leveling off effect after like 4 or 5 orders, right? Like where they're not more likely to repurchase again or churn at that point, right? So it kind of stables off after like 5 orders. And so like a lot of the data is just suggesting us to, it's like, hey, you have to just basically get people to buy 3, right? If you get them to like the 3rd order, they're way more likely to stick with you long term and make that next purchase. And that's a lot of that we also leverage these type of insights into the segmentation, the lifecycle stuff that we create.
Awesome. So on top of this, just thinking about, if you go to the next slide, just this concept of the birth of a customer. So how do we essentially continuous optimization loops with data directly from your customers? So we like to call kind of the customer's first order that birth of the customer. So that's when kind of things can get exciting. You can start engaging with customers. It's revenue generating, obviously, which is important. And the way we like to look at it is kind of to John's point before, you have this window where a customer is very likely to purchase again, and then they can be essentially considered churned if they don't purchase within that window. So we call it like the retention advantage window. And it's this area where you have the opportunity to engage. The customer maybe hasn't purchased that second time yet, but you could continue to sell them, and kind of whether it's learn from them through capturing DFC data, segmenting emails, a ton of opportunity here. But once this window starts to go, it's almost just like you're almost better off just like not communicating to these customers, because the likelihood that they would buy just starts to become so incredibly low. So just something to think about of like this immediate window. I'm assuming, I'm not sure, but possibly in segments, you could probably see like what that window is, and just make sure that your emails, like your whole strategy up to that point, is set up to make sure you're communicating and capturing data prior to that, whether it's, hey, after 120 days, the opportunity just kind of starts to really diminish exponentially. So just something to think about. And again, it's just, we say at Enquirelabs, like we operationalize this data. So instead of maybe running quarterly surveys or thinking about survey data as this one-off kind of monolith practice that maybe you do once a year or at a specific time frame, it's how do we capture this data in an ongoing manner and actually put it to work to go solve a problem. And retention is obviously one of those large problems that everyone's trying to solve.
Next up, we're just going to look at some examples, some real world examples from a client that we recently brought on to Homestead. So we talk about segmentation. I think it's kind of like a buzzword to an extent, but like we just want to look at the examples of like what happens when you start to segment more. So I pulled opens, clicks, and revenue per recipient from a recent client. So this client had some segmentation set up. Honestly, it was a lot more than what most clients come to us with, but they did have some segmentation set up to start. What we did was we added in, we retested the length of time that the segments were pulling from, and we also added in other zero-party and first-party data points. So on opens, you can see they started out there at the beginning of January. They had a good campaign that went out that had a 3% open rate. After that, it kind of leveled off right below 20%. We were able to take them to the low 20s, mid 20s. This is still a work in progress. We're still working with them on this, but the next slide really shows the difference with segmentation. So previously they were getting about 0.4 to 0.6% click rate. And then when we came on, we've got them now going anywhere from, our lowest campaigns at 0.9% and then all the way up to 1.7%. We really view click percentage as a down funnel indicator of success. you can have high open rates and terrible clicks and terrible revenue per recipient. But if we are improving clicks or have clicks at a healthy rate, then we know that assuming that the site is optimized, that purchases will come. And so the next slide, you'll also see that on a revenue per recipient basis. Again, like they were sending to such a wide audience that the opens, clicks, and revenue per recipient that's being sent to ESPs, it's a bad signal. Honestly, it shows ESPs that you're sending non-relevant content to people who just don't care about it. So by dialing this in, our opens and clicks improve. That also leads to an increase in revenue per recipient. But the big thing really is that we're now showing to ESPs that we send relevant and engaging content, which will help us stay out of spam, which is the big point, but really just helps us show off. And this is maybe going a little bit deep, but like when we're sending from Klaviyo, we're sending from shared IP pools. And so by showing to Klaviyo that we have good sending practices, then we have the opportunity to increase within their IP sending pools to a better reputation of sending pool. Again, that kind of goes a little bit deep, but these are just like the first order consequences of like really proper segmentation and how that affects your business.
Awesome. So some recipes for success. The first one we just wanted to highlight. We didn't want to go too deep in the attribution side of things, just because I feel like that's where surveys really got a lot of traction over the last few years. But just talking about the user versus buyer problem. So the majority of brands do have this problem, and to sum it up, it pretty much means like the person who's actually entering their information into your checkout is not the end user of your product. And if you're segmenting kind of whether it's sending emails, doing some personalization, like all of these things are going to be a little bit off for those kind of where the buyer and user are not the same. So this is just a kind of easy home run example as far as who is this order for is a great question to solve this. It's not necessarily something that we would like. You can run it in perpetuity if you have a lot of gift givers, if you want to segment them out, or people who are purchasing for other people. But we recommend just running this for the first like a month or so just to get a baseline. Again, if it's the majority of buyer equals buyer, then you don't really have to run it again. You know that the majority of people aren't gift givers. But if there is a large disparity there, like setting up custom flows for gift givers versus users, hey, review our product. It's like, why am I reviewing a product that I didn't end up using? So just kind of an easy example to really kind of hit home and understand the value of kind of personalization and DFC data. And then on the next slide, just another example around personalization. So this is honestly probably my favorite question within the Enquirelabs stack. It's how would you classify yourself? It's just a very simple question that allows customers to like opt in and immediately see benefit. This example, this student professional hobbyist was actually pulled from an existing customer who sells it's like a Wi-Fi hacking kit. And it's really built for people to learn about how Wi-Fi works. And he had no idea. He just assumed all of his customers were professionals. I think the largest cohort ended up being students. And it was just incredibly educational. Him is like, now we need to create 2 more flows. I didn't know these buyer personas existed. And they've just seen a massive ROI coming out of the fact that they've just learned this single data point and have been able to build upon their personas. So it's kind of beating the drum on the point that Jacob gave earlier around the other example where you can capture this via email as well, but just a very clear-cut example of how a simple question can have kind of downward positive effects. And then the next slide, I could drop a link to this for everyone in the chat. This is just our question bank. So this is something that we're working towards adding to our product long-term, but just wanted to give everyone kind of some inspiration as far as like, we keep talking about asking customers questions. Like what are those questions? So in this list, I think there's 103 examples. And the whole idea here is just to get kind of your brain turning around, oh, I can solve this problem. I can ask these customers these questions, really just to kickstart the data collection on the DFC side. So yeah, we just posted a link there, but feel free to peruse that. But yeah, really good starting point for diving into some of this data collection.
Awesome. Yeah. So like, how do we actually put this data to work, right? So there's so much, detail now you've learned from both first surveys from Enquirelabs. we think of segments as like the sort of like the data hub, right? The data layer that is connecting between Shopify and all your different marketing channels, right? You create segments in the platform, and you can actually push that across all the channels at once, right? It's a seamless experience. You don't have to recreate tags at every single place, and you can trust that that same list is going to be consistently synced, to your email, to your SMS, even from Facebook and Google, right? Like when the one thing that I actually people ask me a lot about is like, well, why do I need to sync segments back to Facebook? It's actually because you have a lot more, especially now that the conversion API is like a little wonky and with iOS changes, but there's so much data actually buried in your Shopify store, right? Like now that you've segmented, you've sorted them, based on CLV or purchase behavior, that's actually a very, very high value target that if you give it to Facebook, they are still able to retarget those customers pretty effectively, right? Like what's broken is like they don't have a lot of the conversion data, they don't have a lot of that, IDFA stuff from the iPhones themselves. But if you give it like really good, solid conversion data, they're still able to actually give it retarget those customers pretty effectively, and so that's what people would still use that for. And again, like this is just like a really quick example on this is the fashion store. So they didn't really have any segments before, but now like with the life cycle, they've created a like 10 flows. Really, like they really went to town on the life cycle, and they create like 10 different flows to target different areas of the life cycle journey grid that you see below. And then they're able to see a ton of increase from their email revenue in just like a quarter's time. Another case study from Leah Beauty. This, I think they just hit like 100 million sometime this year or last year. Like I think Clarence bought them, but like they were able to get so much more increase from their repeat purchasers by understanding the different product lines and different product journeys, right? And so the question that came to us, really having not understand when do people repurchase, right? Like they wanted to understand, they have like these blush, face blush products, and they're like mascara products, they're lipstick products. They all have different purchase patterns. They know that the cycles are different. They want to know whether people go from one to the other. They had no way to understand that question, right? And so using product journey and then segmenting based off like the product purchases, right? Like the personas, things that Matt was talking about earlier. They're able to get like really good information on like, oh, okay, so they do go from this color, this tint to this mascara. And then they really double down on creating optimized flows by SKU line, that gave them like a ton more repeat purchases, just from that data alone. And so it took a lot of work, and then they had to create a ton more flows, but it was worth it, right? Because they actually got like a huge bump in terms of their repeat purchasers.
Yeah, so next we'll just kind of talk about how like all this data that's being pulled in can be used to inform content. So this is an example from Enquirelabs. What's your favorite thing about our product? This person selects healthy options. So not only does this just give you the ability to show them more relevant content next time, but it also just helps inform content for every other channel. I mean, now they're getting an email that has healthy options. And if you look at this data and it says that 60% of people are purchasing your product for healthy options, then right away, maybe you deprioritize unique flavors or convenient packaging within your messaging on paid and email, on social, organic. Like this, like really just is the opportunity to not only make this customer experience better, the one-to-one customer experience, but then like your customer experience with everyone else. Like when you continue to see like trends develop, like what Matt's talked about with like the buyer versus user, like it really just allows you to have a better idea of not just talking to one person, but to your whole entire audience. Next up, I'm going to talk through some best practices that we set up as an agency. So the first one is to have a working basic model set up before going deep on personalization. what we see is that a lot of brands will try and do some really crazy stuff within their flows, within their emails. And honestly, a lot of times there's conditional splits that are broken. They set it up once and they think that they can don't have to come back and tweak it later. So like we find frequently conditional splits that are like sending to 0 people to, so the intention was great, but the follow-up just didn't match. So another thing is you want to make sure that the audience is big enough that the work being done to personalize experience is 1, statistically significant, and 2, meaningful to your company. Like if it's not statistically significant, then you really can't trust what's coming out of it. And then the second one, if it's not meaningful to your company in terms of revenue, content, relationship, like then you're really putting yourself through maybe like a medium to high lift practice that's just not going to benefit you or the customer. And then you also just want to think through how the customer journey and how this data might change that. So we've talked through like just the content examples, and it really drives back to that. Like after I have this piece of data, how does this touch every other touch point that our customers have? Going on to the next slide. This is just another example, like kind of like a real world example that you might want to use. So if your product, if you know that your product is used primarily for gifting, you send out a monthly email with reasons why someone can gift your product this month. A lot of time, like every single month, someone in your life has a reason to gift for them. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, graduations. There's always a reason that you can give someone a gift in your life, and we want to help those people think of those people before it's actually time to gift. And then this data, it really just lets you have a better understanding of what customers are purchasing, how that changes on subsequent purchase. Like pulling this data from Tresl, like John's talked about it a lot, but just really knowing like when someone should get this next email, what the content should be because of the data we pulled from Enquire and other ZPD and DFC data sources. Like that's how we want to think through this, is like how can we use this in our segmentation and our later content.
Cool. I think the next slide is the contact of each of the speakers, and so that kind of wraps up the content that we've prepared today for you guys. I think we will open it up now for Q&A. So if you have any questions regarding any content discussed today, or if you just have any questions regarding segmentation, personalization, DFC data, marketing flows, so on and so forth, definitely feel free to ask them now. And then, you can also specifically ask one of the speakers or a target, or the entire panel would be fine too. So I do have a question from Vincent to John. How does Segment's tagging ability differ from Shopify Plus Flow's tagging?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question. So, so Segments is we actually help you create segments based off of those tags. We are not actually tagging the customers themselves for you, right? So like Enquirelabs, for example, they could collect this post-purchase survey data. You could then create tags on top of that data, for example, using Shopify Flow. And then we will be able to then pick up that data, the tags data from Shopify during our daily data sync. And then you would then be able to like pivot your data using those tags and see the data change, the different insights, cohorts, journey, and so on and so forth. And then you can then push that into different marketing channels, right? So that's how that will work.
Cool, thanks, John. We got another question. Attribution post-purchase. Is there a good rule of thumb for when to switch over to asking about personalization? So I think maybe Matt can take this.
Yeah, I think the default here should just be to run both. Like you can just, at least with our product, you can ask one question after another. In the way Enquirelabs and our question stream works is you actually like ask these over time. So one of the things I would think of when trying to collect personalization and just customer data is just the term like progressive profiling. It's a very popular term in kind of B2B CRM SaaS worlds where it's like, hey, we don't need to show this customer this long 50 question form all at once. We can capture this data over time. So that's how I would think about that. As far as when to switch over, like if your post-purchase attribution survey data has never changed, let's say you advertise on 3 channels and you're not kind of experimenting with new ones, which we wouldn't necessarily recommend, then the attribution survey isn't going to tell you anything. It's just going to tell you more of the same. Again, we'd rather have people experimenting into channels, building their own attribution models, and just kind of owning that to create kind of a competitive advantage on the attribution side in-house. So it really all depends on the specific situation for sure. But yeah, I think the good rule of thumb is like run both. Like you can get aggressive with styling on the Enquirelabs survey, and you could get, like, we have customers who have like 85% completion through the 3rd question. So there's really no reason to highlight one over another.
Awesome. Thanks. Any other questions from the audience? I'll give 2 to 3 minutes for people to still come in with questions. I do have one more. It says, what is the easiest way to tie segmentation surveys to the customer's order value? So I guess maybe Matt or Jacob.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I think, Enquire within our product, you could obviously do that. Like we're capturing order information whenever we capture responses. So the customer data is always tied. I'd be curious, kind of Jacob's opinion here, if you're capturing that segmentation data in a Klaviyo email, like the example you showed, and you could most likely pull that. I know you could pull it out of Klaviyo. I'm not sure if they have reporting in there to see the difference. Yeah.
So there's, at least as far as I know, there's not reporting based off of that. What we do is create what we call like high roller segments. So, people who have spent, in excess of AOV over multiple purchases. So that's something that we do, but there's not like a reporting feature around AOV in there.
Got it.
I think you could do it with segments. A little bit of self plug here, but I think once you've successfully tagged those purchase surveys, you can actually see, like, in the My Segments page, you can actually see the once you apply those filters, we actually give you like stuff like number of average purchases, order values, CLV, I think click rates and open rates, I believe. Yeah, so you'll be able to like see the data. This is also part of the reason why people like love segments to go with Klaviyo, is because they can actually see the data and know why they're segmenting, before they actually create segments, right? Because with Klaviyo, you kind of have to wait. Like once you segment, you have to wait until responses come in, right? But if you already know something about these customers, you can segment and see the data before you actually send the email.
Got it. Cool.
All right. It looks like we don't. Oh, just kidding. We do have one more question from Bjarni from Iceland. So I can have a customer survey. Each question can auto tag customers in Shopify, and segments will pick up the tags. So I can segment via interest, behavior, or some other stuff.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yes,
yeah. That's the power of a lot of this stuff. It's definitely why segments is a cool product too. It's just more or less the exploration of it. Of like what happens if we combine these 2 data sources from an analysis perspective. It might be kind of a null point at the end where it's like, okay, there's really no difference in AOV among these people. So yes, it's great for personalization, but it's not great for boosting AOV in that sense, or just understanding AOV. So it really just it's just explorations that can be insightful essentially. So that's a great kind of question to ask there, and just another way to pivot this data. That's like, yeah, that's what everyone's looking for right now.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Where do we sign up? Where do we sign up, Matt? Where do we sign up for?
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we have today. We wrapped up in 40 minutes. Why don't I give each speaker one last time to give a short plug? Where can we find you, or how can we trial your product? And then just maybe one final takeaway for the audience, and we can wrap it up. John?
Why don't Jacob go first? I think.
Okay, yeah, we'll go backwards then. Jacob?
For sure. So I'm a partner at Homestead Studio. We do work with e-commerce companies, primarily on Shopify and Klaviyo. A lot of customers come to us because they see that, I think email is kind of experiencing a renaissance, email and SMS, like, these life cycle channels. They come to us whenever they see that either they know they're not doing enough or they have a suspicion that they're not doing enough. The easiest way that we see that is, a customer comes to us and they have like, within their Klaviyo dashboard, it's like 10% attributed to Klaviyo. I know there's all kinds of, disagreements around attribution, but for simplicity's sake, we know that like whenever we see brands that are in that 10 to 15%, 10 to 20%, like these are brands that just don't have the foundation set up. They're not collecting enough customers. They're not collecting enough data on them. They don't have a consistent campaign cadence set up. They don't have like a full flow build out in place. Maybe they're missing a couple like core flows. And so when we see customers that come in like that, like we know that assuming the business is big enough that it's a huge win for both of us, because there's just so much low-hanging fruit within email that brands, we talk to brands frequently who have a single flow setup, a two flow setup, and they're doing, $10 million a year. And so we know that like when we talk to these brands that there's just so much opportunity for us to help them out. And that's what we do every day. I focus on the email and SMS side of the team, but we do also have a growth side of the division that focuses on paid social, paid ads, and then who can take creative that you provide us and, mix and mash it, a million different ways into creatives that convert on, paid social and all the different channels that we can help advise you on. Matt?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm Matt Barr. I'm the founder and CEO of Enquirelabs. Feel free to check us out at enquirelabs.com. Kind of one takeaway here is really like in an ideal, we just get everyone starting to think more in the DFC realm, whether that's using Enquire or not. Like, of course, we'd love that. But I think that's the biggest takeaway here is implement it into your strategy. Start thinking about it more holistically versus on a kind of per channel basis. So it's like great to think about it in the realm of email. It's very like that's probably the highest utility point from a DFC standpoint. But once you start thinking about to the comment in the chat before, like tagging customers, how can we use this data in different areas? How is it better? Like we like to say better build mental models within your marketing team to help them make better decisions every day. So everyone is making these micro decisions of like, is this creative or this creative and whatnot. And the more you can learn about your customers directly from them, as far as their preferences, their age, their gender, where they heard about you, and then start to really dive into that data, the bigger like competitive advantage you're going to build, because you're just going to know your customers that much better than your competitors. So that's kind of the one takeaway. If anyone ever wants to chat, like happy to jump on other calls, dive into whether it's Enquire, just anything e-com kind of data related. Feel free to hit us up at Enquirelabs or hit up my personal Twitter. And
Matt has a really cool podcast too,
called Question Authority, season 2 starting in April.
So yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like just like, I mean, data seems hard, but it doesn't have to be. It's one of those things. It's like, it's the tools, it's not you really. I mean, it's hard enough running an e-commerce company. Now you're being sort of like tasked to like become a data company as well. I mean, like that's not happening, right? So we are here to try to make everything simpler for you. We really want to make data as accessible, as intuitive as possible. We're not about like full like tables and charts. Like, I mean, this stuff like actually turns me off. We just want to help you explore the data and make smart decisions, using the DFC data, right? So we do have a 14-day free trial that you can take advantage of. If you haven't tried it, definitely check us out. And, like just hit us up, like, and you'll be able to talk to me or talk to Brian's beautiful face, and we'll definitely help you out.
All right. Thanks. All right. Well, that's it for today. That's all we have for you guys. Hopefully you guys had one or two implementable things to take away and try out for your brand. And you have the contact information there below. We'll send out a recap email with a recording, the deck, and some of the things we talked about today. And if you have any questions, feel free to just reach out to us. Thank you guys so much for your time, and have an awesome day or evening wherever you guys are in the world.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.
Brian.
Thanks, you guys.